The town of Alder Creek was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked, their cars idling outside the post office, their trust in one another woven into the quiet fabric of daily life. Nestled between rolling fields and a slow-moving river, it seemed insulated from the corruption and chaos of the world beyond its borders. Or so people thought. The Public Works project had been celebrated as a turning point for Alder Creek. Roads would be repaired, bridges reinforced, and a new water treatment plant promised cleaner living for everyone. The funding came in a wave of applause, speeches, and ribbon cuttings. No one doubted the integrity of the numbers, the contracts, the signatures on thick folders. No one except an accountant who quietly noticed the numbers did not add up. For weeks, he traced the funds, page after page, ledger after ledger, the faint scratch of his pen a silent protest against the theft unraveling beneath the surface. What he found shocked him. Millions had vanished into shell companies, offshore accounts, and contracts awarded to businesses that didn't exist. He knew it wasn't just incompetence, it was theft on a scale that could shake the town's leadership to its core. He prepared to testify. But before he could, he vanished. His office sat locked and empty, the calendar still marked with reminders of meetings he would never attend. Yet, the ledgers remained, bound, meticulous, undeniable. They were proof, but also a curse. Whoever held them was in danger, for the thieves knew the records could bring them down. And so began the manhunt. Not just for a missing man, but for the ledger that told the story of betrayal, greed, and a conspiracy that reached further than Alder Creek ever imagined. The disappearance rattled Alder Creek more than anyone expected. At first, townsfolk thought he had simply left, tired of his quiet, repetitive life. But when the sheriff's deputies pried open his office, the truth took root. The ledgers lined the shelves like sentinels, waiting for someone to read their contents. Inside those bound books, numbers whispered accusations. Page after page painted a picture of betrayal, construction contracts far above market value, invoices for work never done, payments directed to ghost companies. The local sheriff wanted to treat it as a missing persons case, but word spread quickly that the accountant had discovered something dangerous. Soon, not just the sheriff but state investigators, journalists, and even figures from neighboring towns descended upon Alder Creek. Everyone wanted the ledgers. The accountant's disappearance became a story of its own. Rumors filled the cafes and grocery aisles. Some said he'd been killed, others that he'd taken the money himself and fled. But beneath the gossip lay fear. If someone could vanish from Alder Creek for exposing corruption, what did that say about the safety of anyone else? The accountant's family pleaded for answers. They knew he would never abandon them. His wife clung to his routines, repeating to anyone who would listen that he left his shoes by the door, his coat hung neatly on its hook. He had intended to come home. Investigators combed through his records. Each ledger carried his handwriting, precise and steady. They also found notes clipped to certain pages, highlighting suspicious accounts, arrows pointing toward anomalies. It was as if he had been building a roadmap for whoever found the books. But the roadmap led not just to fraud, it pointed toward names that carried weight in Alder Creek. Names on the town council. Names tied to construction magnates, lawyers, even members of law enforcement. The ledgers were dynamite, and everyone knew it. Whoever had orchestrated the theft was now desperate, searching every corner of Alder Creek for the missing man and the records he left behind. The accountant was gone. The hunt for the truth had only begun. The deeper the investigation went, the more dangerous it became. Anonymous calls warned people to drop the matter. Cars tailed investigators at night. One of the accountant's colleagues was attacked, beaten until he refused to speak about what he knew. The town's trust began to crumble. Meetings at City Hall turned into shouting matches, with accusations flying in every direction. Those who once celebrated the Public Works project now realized they had been used as pawns. Bridges half finished, roads poorly paved, a water treatment plant still nothing more than blueprints. Millions had vanished while Alder Creek was left with hollow promises. The accountant's ledgers became sacred artifacts, symbols of truth in a place clouded with lies. But possessing them meant danger. A local journalist who claimed to have copies of a few pages found her car torched outside her house. Fear grew that whoever had silenced the accountant was still watching, waiting for anyone who came too close. The sheriff, under pressure, faced a choice: protect the powerful men he had called friends, or pursue justice for the accountant. Nights found him pacing his office, staring at old photographs of himself shaking hands with the very people now under suspicion. His loyalty to Alder Creek was being tested in ways he had never imagined. Meanwhile, whispers circulated that the accountant's body had been dumped in the river, or buried in an unmarked grave along the construction site. Search parties scoured the woods and banks, but no trace was found. The absence was worse than a confirmation. It left a vacuum, a silence too heavy to ignore. The accountant had left behind numbers, but not his fate. And the town was left wondering whether truth could outlast the darkness gathering around it. Months passed, but the mystery refused to die. The ledgers were copied, shared, and analyzed, their numbers forming the backbone of a case that reached the state capital. But still, the accountant remained missing. His absence haunted every conversation, every courtroom proceeding, every headline. The conspiracy unraveled slowly, like thread pulled from a tight weave. One arrest led to another, until the network of fraudsters began to crack. Businessmen were indicted, council members resigned in disgrace, and even a high-ranking law enforcement official faced charges. Yet the heart of it all, the man who had uncovered the truth, was nowhere to be found. The trial loomed, built on the accountant's meticulous records. Prosecutors leaned heavily on his work, describing him as a man of integrity whose disappearance only underscored the danger of standing against corruption. But as testimony unfolded, a chilling realization spread: the accountant had known. His notes suggested he had anticipated the risk. His final pages were less about numbers and more about warnings, as though he expected his life might be cut short. The courtroom grew silent when a prosecutor read his last entry aloud: "If I vanish, it is because the truth is too much for them to bear. But the numbers will remain. And the numbers cannot lie." Alder Creek would never be the same. Years later, Alder Creek still bore scars from the scandal. Some bridges were rebuilt, roads repaved, the water treatment plant finally completed. But the town never forgot the accountant who had given everything to expose the truth. His ledgers remained in the archives, studied by law students, journalists, and investigators. They became a testament to the power of one man's integrity in the face of overwhelming corruption. The manhunt had ended without resolution, his body never found. But in Alder Creek, his absence spoke louder than his presence ever had. For in the silence he left behind, the town learned that trust, once broken, can only be mended by sacrifice. And though the accountant's fate remained a mystery, the numbers he left behind ensured that his voice would never be silenced.